Those of you just tuning in, very warm welcome to our latest webinar, which difficult to believe we've been running these webinars now since March 2020. So we're over 3 years old, my goodness. And well over 5,000 people have watched us in that time. So we must be doing something right. We're just going to leave it until just after midday before we kick off. So while you're waiting, you might like to go on to slido.com and then go in with the code hashtag LM120523, which of course is today's date, or go on via the QR code, which you can see top right in the screen. And as always with these webinars, we do ask you to use slido.com, both to fill in any surveys that we ask of you on the day, and indeed some feedback towards the end of the hour. And also particularly important is to ask any questions you may have of our guest speaker. Please put that into slido.com as well, so that we can put them up on the screen later on. It's exactly midday. I'm going to give it another minute or two, if I may, ladies and gents, because we want to make sure that everybody that wants to be here is actually here. So we'll just let people in as they come in. We're let me see. Yes, we've still got quite a few more due, haven't we, Abraham? So I think we ought to give it another few minutes, if you don't mind, ladies and gents. For those just come in, a very good afternoon as it is now. While we're waiting to start, if you wouldn't mind going on to slido.com and registering, hashtag LM and then today's date, i.e. 120523, or via the QR code, because we're going to ask you to partake in a survey as the presentation unfolds. And also, if you've got any questions for our guest speaker, that would be the time to, or that would be the place rather, to put your questions if you would, please. Just give it till 2 minutes past, I think, because there's quite a few people Abraham was still waiting for, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I don't want to leave it too long, because obviously those people that are kindly here on time, then we ought to start. You'll have to forgive me, ladies and gents. I'm actually speaking to you today from my iPhone. I'm in a hotel in Bridgewater, and for some reason my MacBook Pro doesn't like the Wi-Fi system, and it won't let me in. So I think what we'll do, Abraham, if you don't mind, is we'll make a start. I think others will have to join us as they come in. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, that's fine.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to find myself on the on here. I've lost myself on my screen. There we are. Okay. So officially a very good afternoon to you all, ladies and gents. My name is Andrew Carpenter. I'm Chief Executive of both Constructing Excellence in the Midlands and also the Structural Timber Association. And we are joined as hosts of these webinars by my friends and family within Constructing Excellence. Delighted we've got Catherine along with us today from Supply Chain School, who is going to be talking about a very important topic, something which is ever increasing in importance with our daily lives, really, in the construction sector. And particularly what Catherine's going to be concentrating on is what's in it for me. So Catherine, thank you for giving of your valuable time to spend an hour with us this Friday. What I'm going to do without further ado is hand over to you, because what's going to be different this week is that the questions, rather than being asked at the beginning, they're going to actually form part of Catherine's presentation. So as the presentation goes on, she will ask you a couple of questions, which we will ask you to answer during the presentation. And then as usual, at the end of the presentation, then I will be asking questions that you have of Catherine later on. So enjoy the next 60 minutes. Thank you, Catherine. Over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. And thanks everyone for giving up your lunch hour to be here to talk about fairness, inclusion, and respect and what it means for your business. Can you all see that slide now up on your screen? Andrew, can you just confirm you can see that for me?
I'm actually in people at the moment, so I'm just looking to see who's on board. Abraham, can
yes,
you just
great. Thank you, Peter. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Fantastic. So I'm going to be talking to you about fairness, inclusion, respect, and why it's essential to your business success. Now, I know some of you will have come across FIR before. For others, it will be entirely new. So I'm not assuming necessarily prior knowledge around this topic. So it is going to be at more of an introductory level. So I do apologise in advance if you have covered the topic before, but hopefully you'll still find some key takeaways. And I really welcome your input and your questions at the end, because I think this is a topic that always lends itself to some really interesting and fruitful discussion. So you will get a copy of the slides after today, so don't feel that you need to snapshot or copy down notes if you don't want to today. And if you've got any questions at the end, I certainly welcome them. So firstly, who are we? Why am I speaking to you about this topic? So as Andrew mentioned, I actually run the Fairness, Inclusion and Respect program for the Supply Chain Sustainability School. And this is just a quick diagram that gives you a bit of an idea of where we sit, because some of you may have heard of us and some not. We are one of the business areas of a larger organisation called Action Sustainability, who we also provide advisory services. We have the school where we educate people and increase skills of people across the construction and built environment sector. We run a sustainability tool which includes a diversity survey, which I'll talk about a little bit further on. And we also help fund the ISO 2400.org public interest company, which is a non-profit, free-to-access platform to develop a global community of practice around ISO 2400, which of course is the international standard on sustainable procurement, which our director, Sean McCarthy, OBE, helped develop. So in that context, when we talk about fairness, inclusion and respect, we are looking at it, I guess, with the lens of the ability to influence change and affect positive behaviour throughout your supply chain and through the procurement process as a whole, as well as the topic itself. But so it fits as a topic under the school, but also hooks into at the other areas of the business. So the actual Fairness, Inclusion, Respect program is delivered by the Supply Chain Sustainability School, which is a collaboration that began 10 years ago between industry participants with a mutual interest in building the skills of the sector. And we provide free and accessible sources of learning and information for anyone who's working in or who aspires to work in the built environment. So currently we're led by 194 industry partners. And fairness, inclusion, respect, you'll see here, is one of the key areas of our People Matter Charter, which is a workforce strategy for the built environment. And in terms of the breadth of what the school does and where FIR fits into it, you can see that there are elements of fairness, inclusion, respect in the drivers and why we do what we do, in the topics that we cover, and also in the enablers. And really here, fairness, inclusion, respect is one of the enablers to actually drive change and implement good practice in your businesses. So I'd like to kick off the discussion today with a poll. The first question I have for you is, what do you understand by the phrase fairness, inclusion and respect? So if you could pop into Slido there, what does that actually mean to you? And I'll give you a few minutes to do that. and give you another minute to pop in your thoughts there, and I might get Abraham or Andrew to give us some feedback on people's views of what fairness, inclusion, respect actually means. Okay, so we'll move on from that poll. So Andrew or Abraham, are you able to give us? Unfortunately, I can't see the responses at my end at the moment. Are you able to give us a bit of an idea of where people are coming to from this? Great. All right. So fairly, we've got lots about bias and unbiased. Creating is an interesting one. So it's about actually being creative, moving things forward, accommodating everyone, respecting, yes, choices is a great one. Value and valuing people, safe. Absolutely. So fairness, inclusion, respect is linked to safety and psychological safety. Prejudice and beliefs, yes, very much elements that come into the program and how we actually treat people fairly and inclusively and with respect. We've got environment, team, personal, equally, and experience. So all very, very much the sorts of language that that we hear when we speak about fairness, inclusion, respect. I will just jump back to sharing my screen with you now. So when we actually speak about fairness, inclusion, and respect, we actually cover three main components. So when we talk about fairness, what we're speaking about there is treating everyone as individuals according to their needs. So we saw that bias was one of your responses. The absence of bias is really critical to achieving fairness. And essentially, this is about supporting people to do their best. When we talk about inclusion, this is very much those concepts you raised about making everyone feel like they're a key part of the business, connected to that sort of psychological safety and safety within their workplace, and valuing the people that we work with. So acknowledging that everyone brings different skills to the table, and that's all valuable perspectives and makes our tapestry richer. And then respect is about creating an atmosphere where we can all succeed. So regardless of what you bring to the table, your background and so on, it's acknowledging that that it's really, really important to bring everyone's views to the table. So sometimes when we talk about FIR, or fairness, inclusion, respect, or FIR for short, people ask, isn't FIR just another acronym for EDI or DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion? And my answer to that is yes and no. So in this sense, we are looking more broadly than the traditional elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So and where that fits. So we assist teams and organisations. So there's an organisational lens, which is very common to diversity, equity, inclusion work, but we're also focused on changing the culture within the whole built environment sector, and ultimately the impact that that has on the broader community. We've had some really great feedback about how the terminology lands in business. So we know that sometimes people can find issues with the term EDI. It may polarize people based on their existing impression of it or experience with it. And sometimes EDI is viewed as a distinct function within an organisation, a bit like a HR function or an IT function, for example. Whereas what we really need is for people to view FIR as an issue considered right from the board level and cascaded down, and right from your entry level and flowing upwards, because it impacts everything throughout the business and needs to be the responsibility of everyone in the business. So you will find that the FIR program that we run covers the common areas for attention in EDI, such as the 9 protected characteristics under the equality law, but it's also much bigger than that. So we're looking at a concept around how we can ensure everyone can participate, belong, and succeed in our sector. So ultimately, FIR benefits individuals, teams, businesses, the sector, and also the community. So the second poll I'd like to get your views on, please, is what are the issues that are going on in your business right now? What are your biggest business challenges at the moment? If you can jump onto Slido and enter your results, that would be fantastic. And I realise here that you'll probably have more than one, but if you could try and pick your biggest business challenges, that would be helpful. Okay, I'll give you 1 more minute to do that, and then we'll pop the responses up on the screen to have a look at. Okay, can we pop those responses up on the screen? We'll have a look. Okay, being aware, lack of people, and recruitment. So we've got several responses of those types of answers. Really interesting. Okay, so let's have a look at this in some more detail. So our research has shown that when we speak to businesses about the challenges, there's 4 key business challenges that keep coming up across businesses, and this includes SME businesses as well. So firstly, it's people, mainly attracting, recruiting, and retaining the right talent. The second challenge we hear about is winning work. So ensuring that you've got an ongoing pipeline, particularly when you're impacted by the current events and the health of the economy. The third item that comes up very commonly is cost. So this may be cost around materials, around energy, insurance, inflation. We know it's expensive to be in business, and we know that you need to keep your costs down to a minimum. And then another one that comes up very commonly, particularly for SME businesses, is time, and simply that people feel there's not enough of it. So SMEs can find that this sort of challenge is exacerbated, particularly if you're both in the business and running the business. But the great news is all of these challenges can be addressed through implementing FIR in your business. So let's look at why and how. So firstly, when we're talking about people and talent, it's no secret that you can't deliver your business goals without the right people. So people actually choose organisations that they see are serious about FIR, or fairness, inclusion, respect. They want to work in environments that are fair, inclusive, and respectful. Yet you have to recognise that you're actually fishing in a very small pond of talent and skills. So if we're looking at construction alone, we know there's a high demand. We need an additional 266,000 people by 2026. We're looking to retrofit something in the order of 29 million properties, and that is actually a 70% increase in demand in the next 5 years. So the challenge here is really, how do you stand out from the crowd? The elements that you're looking at here are, in addition to a skills shortage and the fact that we will need so many people moving forward, is you've got an aging workforce. So just 10% of the workforce are aged between 16 to 24, and in 1990, to compare, that was actually 22%. So we've seen a 12% drop off since 1990s. 25% of our sector will actually retire in the next 10 years. And again, in 1990, we were only looking at a figure of 10%. So we've got 15% more people looking at retiring in the next 10 years in our sector than the 1990s. In the context that we're operating in, that legislative context, we've got the Building Safety Act, the Future Home Standard, the Future Building Standard, which are all driving demand for skills, particularly for those that can adapt and deliver those green skills that we need. Yet we've also got image problems in construction. So it's the fact that most industries are considered more attractive than construction to enter. So the CITB Rethinking Recruitment report recently showed that only 30% of people surveyed actually felt that construction was for someone like them. That 17% felt that it was attractive, and only 2% consider it to be their current preferred industry. So a big challenge to overcome in terms of the industry and its perception issues. And then jobs by word of mouth is another challenge you're facing. So construction workers are actually more likely to find jobs through word of mouth than a competitive application. And this really does set the sector apart a little bit compared to some other sectors. So you will actually struggle to find some of the workers that you want to employ in your business. So as I said, you're fishing in a small pond. If you're not yet, you will be competing hard for talent into the future. But FIR is also essential to retaining talent once you've recruited it. So we know that people stay in happy environments that actually meet their needs. So you need FIR to help keep your workforce happy. You know that you can retain staff during downturns, for example, even without pay rises, if you're prepared to offer other benefits like flexibility and really work in with their needs. So creating a workplace that demonstrates FIR is critical to work happiness. And ultimately, it's about the culture and how that underpins your business model and how its people operate. So let's look at some examples of those types of behaviours. So over here we have Joanna, and we'll talk about an example of fairness with Joanna, who's an experienced professional. She's applying for a position in a building company. She has a gap in her CV because she's had some time off due to health issues, and she's worried about whether she'll be taken seriously or whether her CV might be overlooked. She's also very nervous about doing interviews virtually, particularly because she has experienced some hearing loss, which appears to be getting worse. So she applies to ABC Builders. Fortunately, they've actually recently undertaken a review of their recruitment practices to remove bias. So Joanna finds that the ABC Builders apply a blind CV process in the first stage. So they assess all the candidates on a short knowledge-based exercise before they even look at CVs. And that allows Joanna to really showcase her impressive experience, and she easily makes it through to the next round of the recruitment process without having to explain the gap in her CV. The next round is a virtual interview, and ABC Builders clearly sets out what assistance is available to candidates and if any adjustments are needed to be made. And even though Joanna's nervous about disclosing her hearing loss, because she gets this information, she feels far more comfortable about requesting a reasonable adjustment after she speaks with the organiser of the interview. And she actually is able to specify the virtual platform that works best with her hearing issues and allows her to shine. So she goes through the final round, which is an in-person interview at ABC Builders' office. Before she even needs to ask for adjustments herself, the ABC Builders staff actually get in touch with her to confirm what would work best for her needs. And she's able to identify the type of space to hold the interview in. So where they would normally hold them in glass rooms in the reception area where there's a lot of residual background noise, they actually end up choosing an internal staff room, which is actually soundproofed. So Joanna, again, is able to have no issues with her interview and is able to shine. And then finally, assessing the candidates, the scoring criteria that the ABC Builders uses is purely around the candidate's ability to do the job, and it's strictly applied. So her hearing loss and her age and her gap in her CV don't factor into the decision at all. It's all about her experience and her performance through the recruitment process. So she's offered the job. And she feels that that company, having had that employment experience through the recruitment process, is one that will take her health needs seriously into the future. So she feels very comfortable and accepts that position. There's lots of different elements going on there. It's an example of the sorts of ways that you may be able to ensure fairness in a recruitment process, as an example. Second here, under inclusion, we've got Ming Fang, who's a senior IT professional, and Ming Fang has autism. And during the pandemic, the company sent all of its staff to work from home, and it's actually working out its return to work in the office policy at the moment. Ming Fang has really found that working from home made it much more comfortable and productive for him because he finds the noise and the lighting in the office and the open plan design to be really draining for him. He ends up working longer hours than he would like to, and that prevents him getting home to his young family. So Ming Fang's manager actually sets up a meeting to speak to him about the options for return to work. And he listens to Ming Fang's concerns, and they actually come up with a plan that accounts for his best working environment so that he can remain connected to the business and his colleagues, but also meet his best working arrangements. So he ends up with a hybrid working pattern where he's predominantly home-based with office attendance for meetings and other key times of the year. And when he does come into the office, he can use a quiet room which has natural lighting to the outdoors, which actually helps him concentrate better than in open plan. 2 months later, a junior staff member who has autism joins the business, and Ming Fang actually offers to mentor that staff member to assist them to transition into the business and to be their voice with the new management as well. An example of Respect here, we have Jendai. Jendai is the only Muslim woman working in a facilities management company. When she started, she found out that the office didn't have a space that she could use to pray and that they weren't aware of Ramadan. They also used to hold boozy events with lots of alcohol, including during Ramadan, and Jendai's found she had to decline those events. So at her 3-month probation review, Jendai's asked for feedback on how the business could improve on her induction and improve for its people. And Jendai actually provides feedback of how much of a difference it would make if she was able to pray at work and if they were aware of Muslim celebrations and had at least some options that didn't involve alcohol so she could attend. And Jendai's manager is really receptive to the feedback. They haven't had to consider this before, but they decide to actually set aside a quiet room that can be used for prayer, but also for others who might need it, and that the next staff event will be an alcohol-free event so that she can actually join. And they go one step further to ask Jendai to actually join the social club to help brainstorm some ideas for alternative events that would be more respectful of different religions and beliefs. So there's lots of ways that you can actually engage and ensure fairness, inclusion, respect in your business. The second business challenge we hear about is winning work. So FIR is essential here as well. FIR is critically important for clients. So there's some examples of quotes up on the screen here, which give you examples of just how important different businesses we've surveyed find it. And this comes into play in both tenders and in contracting. Some clients and suppliers are actually mandating a form of FIR commitment for their supply chain. And that might be through the various inclusion standards, like the Good Work Standard put out by the Mayor of London, or the Global Inclusion Standard set by Clear Assured, or it might be through making sure you can demonstrate a commitment to FIR in terms of your training and your processes internally. So it is really important to be seen as an attractive employer. It's important to be seen as having equality, diversity, inclusion on your agendas. And as Osborne has mentioned here, it's an absolutely vital part to help the industry meet the skill shortages as well. In terms of winning work, inclusion is also an expected part of doing business. So it's necessary to meet tender requirements. It may even be necessary to enable you to bid. It's expected by both the public and the private sector. So no matter what type of work that you might be doing, inclusion is something that that those you're bidding for work from will be looking at. So very briefly, and I won't go through this in detail because you will get the slides afterwards, but from under the legal perspective, you have the Equality Act and you also have the Public Sector Equality Duty, which is Section 149 of the Act that applies to public bodies and any organisations carrying out public functions. You've got procurement practice. So in both the Social Value Act, which came in January 2013, and also the procurement rules, which came in 2020, which now mandate inclusion as a theme in the procurement rules. and also as an essential ingredient of all of the themes. And then finally, it's really important to note that sustainability is very much connected with FIR. In fact, there are the Sustainable Development Goals, so the United Nations collection of 17 interlinked objectives that serve as that shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet. They actually include a number of different goals which fall within the fairness, inclusion, respect aspect. So not just gender equality, but also in terms of working practices, reduced inequalities and institutions and poverty prevention and so on. So when we talk about cost, the third challenge is the cost to a business. So in addition to people and successfully winning work, not focusing on FIR in this context is really costly. So here's a snapshot from our 2022 FIR Culture Impact Survey. So we survey those that are engaging with the FIR program, which is specifically designed to increase their understanding and application of FIR. And we know that FIR has helped to improve behaviours and retain talent and improve stakeholder engagement, health and safety, and so on. So, for example, we know that 69% of people who've engaged with the FIR program have found that it's improved their engagement with stakeholders, and over half finds that it has actually supported them to win new business. 83% have found that FIR actually helps their leaders understand the issues, and 68% have found that it helps to retain talent. We've also seen improved behaviours of 79% of those who participate, and recruiting a more diverse team. So even though some of the benefits can be difficult to quantify, we do know that engaging in fairness, inclusion, respect as a theme and as a topic is really important to the costs of your business, reducing the costs of your business, and ultimately improve productivity and winning more business. And looking at it from a different angle, a commitment to FIR also saves costs and minimises risks, which in themselves can be costly. So we have risks such as reputation risk and viability risk of your business. There's legal action if you're non-compliant. We have employment law cases, which it's worth noting are published online and easily found. We've got companies missing out on bidding for contracts based on legal breaches. So clients can do a search, and they do search potential suppliers, and regardless of what you might be putting in your tender documents. So from that sense, inclusion makes business sense as well. And moving on to the fourth challenge, which is time, FIR actually saves time. So it does this in terms of your ability to innovate and how you come to solve problems as a business. It saves time in terms of your time in managing people and managing the turnover of people. And it also saves your staff's time. So reduced downtime, reduced absenteeism, and also higher productivity that come from people being fully supported and feeling that their workplaces are fair, inclusive, and respectful of them and the talents that they bring. So we do know that FIR helps you gain a competitive edge to be able to deliver your business goals. It's also really important to meeting the challenges that we face as a sector in the future, and that FIR applies to all businesses. So no matter how big or small you are, it's not a nice to have anymore. You really can't afford not to care. So here's some steps that you can actually take to embed FIR in your business. So firstly, you need to commit. So this is about understanding and embracing FIR as critical to your business success. So you may wish to review your practices and your policies and the governance in your business. And we've got some tools available to help you do that. A great starting point is our FIR growth assessment, where you can go on and see where you sit, benchmarked against other businesses and expectations in the sector. Learning is really important. So increasing your knowledge of using the training, the tools, the resources available, upskilling either yourself or your staff as a FIR ambassador. So we actually train people to go out and with the skills and the knowledge to be able to tackle poor behaviour and support positive behaviour in their workplaces. So that might be in on-site roles, it might be in office roles, it might be working with contractors and so on. And also setting learning pathways for your team. So making sure that your team members are continuously learning about different topics and building on their understanding of fairness, inclusion, respect, which then flows into their interactions with colleagues and their stakeholders. Measuring is another really important aspect. So how do you know if you're actually making any difference in your business? Well, you need to capture data to measure your progress. So there is a diversity survey tool available. We run an annual diversity survey, which is entirely free for you to participate in, and you receive a printed report about exactly what your diversity metrics are and where you sit. There's also an optional, if you wish to track this right through your supply chain, there's an optional commercially available item as well, which tracks it right through your supply chain. And lastly, you've really got to commit to improving. So it's about doing all of these things and then continuously improving what you're doing in your business. So you will need to stop and evaluate and assess and amend what you're doing as necessary. It is a process. It's not, as many people matters are, it's not a quick fix or a one size fits all. So you as a business and as business leaders need to continue to commit to learn and to measure and keep going through these steps to success. So if that sounds a bit overwhelming, you might be thinking, where do I start? The great news is there is a full industry-backed program ready for you to implement. So this is where the Fairness, Inclusion, Respect program comes into play. It is focused on developing a more diverse and inclusive industry that works better for everyone. So this is an industry-led, industry-wide initiative, and that's where you can access free and very extensive resources, training, tools, and guidance, whether you're either working in now or whether you aspire to work in the built environment sector. So just to give you a very quick overview of what's on offer, because it's a very big program, going clockwise from the top, I mentioned as a business you can do a FIR growth assessment to assess exactly where you're sitting in your on your FIR journey, and we assess across 5 key areas so that you can look at everything from your employment practices, your commitment to FIR, employing people, your working practices, your site environment, and then also your supply chain. Next, we've got the ability to benchmark. So we've got dashboards and learning pathways to make sure that you can either tailor something for your staff or you can personally choose your learning pathway through our system. Sharing best practice. So we've got a FIR toolkit and a very extensive resources library, and we continuously update that with new resources all the time. So there is plenty available all in one place for you to look through. Learning opportunities, there's training workshops, webinars, masterclasses, everything from beginner level right through to advanced. And and they may be, for example, an introductory workshop on why FIR is important for those who are new to it, or a masterclass in a particular area that impacts what you're doing in your business. We connect or engage people across the sector, so events and conferences. We've got our Inspiring Change conference coming up on the 27th of June, and we run an awards process with that, which actually closes today. So if you'd like to put your business up or an individual you know up for an award for inspiring change for an initiative they have done in either the workplace, the community, or education to promote fairness, inclusion, respect, please do get your nominations in. We promote fairness, inclusion, respect. We've actually got a diversity calendar available now on our website. So if you are doing initiatives in your business to do with particular diversity or inclusion days, you'll always find some resources that are aligned with those days that you may be celebrating. We've got news and articles so we can keep you informed. Allyship and support is really important. So that's where our FIR Ambassador Network comes in. And if you are really keen on this topic, I would suggest you do look into training yourself as a FIR Ambassador and joining our network. We provide a supportive network for people to actually engage with people outside of their own business to discuss the challenges and really look at ways that they can improve the culture in their own businesses. I did talk about the Inspiring Change Award, so I'll jump forward. Finally, we've got measuring and tracking, and this is where our diversity survey and our tool come into play, so you can actually track what's happening in your business. And just to give you a snapshot of some of the resources and training we have available, they are tagged as beginner, intermediate, or advanced to match up to your user needs. One of the more recent items we've put out is actually this toolbox talk on banter. We're finding that is a really great resource for many businesses that are trying to address the use of language and just generally respectful behaviour in their businesses. So the toolbox talks are intended to be taken onto site if that's where your employees work, and they actually come with a full guidance note as well. So if you have someone who's new to delivering a toolbox talk or new to this area, we step you through exactly how you can actually discuss the topic and use that toolbox talk video, animated video, to support your company in focusing on that area. But lots and lots of other things, case studies, having a look at what other companies have done. There's a QR code there that you can scan after today to access that directly. And then finally, you can set up learning pathways as well. So all you need to do is sign up either as a business corporate member or as an individual member. Again, it's free to do this, and you can access the full range of resources. All you need to do is add FIR as an area of interest when you do that, and then you'll have access to all of the FIR resources and updates. So I might hand back to the organisers to go through some questions, and then we can talk about some of the other elements through the questions. Thank you, Andrew.
Catherine, thank you very much for that very comprehensive journey through FIR. Lots and lots for us to think about there and take into consideration. If I could ask you to stop sharing your screen, please.
Absolutely.
Now, Abraham, do we have any questions in Slido?
None yet.
No questions. So, folks, if you have any questions for Catherine, please go to the Slido code that we gave you earlier. There it is, hashtag LM120523. Post any questions that you have. While we're waiting, Catherine, I have a question. I'm interested to know what the uptake's been like so far for you within the supply chain school from companies within the construction sector. And I'd also like an indication, because CE, we split the construction sector into 4 sectors: clients, consultants, contractors, and supply chain. And I wondered if you had any idea where there was an emphasis in terms of take up. Rather a long question.
Okay. Yeah, great questions. All right. Firstly, in terms of take up of FIR as a topic, it is actually one of our most popular topics within the school. So I think it accounts for at least 10% of all of our traffic. And you could see from the early slide I showed up of just how many sustainability topics the school covers. We've got a lot of other topics in there around really hot topics in sustainability, such as carbon and waste reduction and lean methods and off-site construction and so on. I think last year alone we trained 7,700 individuals fully engaged with the FIR program from around 2,500 different companies, and it's a program that's growing. I have to admit, Andrew, I've been with the program 4 months now, and there are market segments that we're not quite touching on yet, who aren't sort of aware of just what's on offer. And it's an incredible program. I have to be honest, to have all of this learning available to people, funded by industry already and at no cost to the end user is incredible and a real opportunity to take account of. And we're getting more uptake from people who need to complete CPD qualifications. So if they've got CPD requirements within their professional qualifications, all of our e-learning modules are CPD accredited, so that goes towards their CPD. And I know how hard it can be as a professional myself to find free CPD that's good quality and available on demand whenever you like to do it. In terms of the market segments and the areas, those different types of roles within the market, we've got a real mix of engagement. So traditionally, we've had more people coming into the school from the infrastructure side because our originating partners were from the infrastructure side of the sector. But we are, as we're moving forward, we are gathering. We've had early adopters from the home sector, for example. We've got representatives from facilities management. All different market segments within the sector. And interestingly, those that contribute to our surveys, both our diversity survey and also we've just closed a FIR culture survey, come from all different backgrounds. So lots of people working with businesses as consultants, both site-based workers and office-based workers, and certainly a lot of contractors represented as well. I couldn't give you exact figures in that sense, but we will have some more data coming out towards the end of the year when we do our playback event for our diversity survey results. So we open up our diversity survey at the end of this month and it runs until the beginning of August. And we ask all businesses in the sector to contribute to that. So that's the survey where you get you put your information in based on some agreed, best practice diversity metrics, and we actually look at that data in detail. Last year, for the second year we ran it, we had, I think it was 377,000 people represented in that data set. It's grown enormously from the first year, and we're hoping this year that will be more extensive, because then we're able to draw connections and similarities and differences across different market segments and across different roles within the industry. So please do take the opportunity to do that and get a bit of a snapshot of where you sit in the market and against your competitors in terms of diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Catherine. We've had some questions now come in on Slido, some very interesting questions. The first one would help me as well, because I don't quite understand this. Can you explain the use of she, her as an identifier signature?
Yeah, sure. So this is obviously a question around the use of pronouns generally, because you'll be aware there may be she, her, or he, him, or they, them. Or some people may have a different combination of that they feel matches with their identity. So the use of pronouns in a signature, and we certainly use it, is really, from my perspective, a sign of inclusion and respect for people who, not all of us, gender identity is not binary, and there are some people, there are a significant portion of people who don't feel that their gender is necessarily represented in either male or female, for example. And this is really just highlighting for people that we shouldn't be treating gender as a binary. We should be inclusive of all people, whether that be people from all across the LGBTIQ community, and that I like to be identified as a she or her, and I identify as a woman. But just because someone may look like a woman at first glance to you doesn't mean that is the gender pronouns that they like to be known as. And some people may feel that they cross different gender identities at different times or in a different way. So this is really being inclusive and accepting that not everyone's the same. And ultimately, just like we get to choose whether we're known as by our first name or a nickname, people should be able to choose the pronouns and the salutation that they feel best reflects their identity and so on.
What, just as an additional question, what do you feel about people like me that don't choose to put this sort of thing after our signature? Is that frowned upon?
Yeah, look, it's a personal choice. I think it's interesting when we talk about inclusion, and just like when we talk about the impact that behaviour has on other people, we're not talking about the fact necessarily that you have to agree with someone or have the same belief as someone else. It's about respecting that others will have other beliefs, and that you can be inclusive in the way that you refer to people and the language that you use, so that you're not being exclusionary. So for me, even though I personally don't have an issue with I'm not very often misgendered myself, and but that the fact that that's not an issue for me doesn't mean that that's not an issue for other people. And I like to make sure that whenever someone is dealing with me, they know that that it's a safe space, and that if they give me their pronouns, I will respectfully use them, because I see that as part of their identity, and that is respectful of them and their identity, just like any other characteristic of their name and what they like to show to the world. So it is a personal choice, but I think that the more that it is acknowledged as a sign of respect for people, and as a way to make spaces safer for other people, it's certainly a positive step in my view.
Okay, thank you for that. That's helped me a lot, and others, I hope. Could we have the next question, Abraham, please? Will newer people joining the industry be more aware of the need of FIR and its application?
It's a really good question. So, and this goes back to what are the new entrants in our industry? What is the world that they're coming through, and what are the influences in their world? It's an interesting point, because many people who are maybe of the older generation in our industry think that, as particularly who are enlightened in this topic, think that the younger generation will come through, will be much more alive to these issues, and some of the changes will naturally flow. But then there's also the issue to look at, that we still are predominantly attracting men into the sector, and there are large proportions of young men, particularly sort of that 15 to 19, 20-year-old age group, who are significantly influenced by what they see online and through different social media platforms and so on. And you have influencers like, for example, Andrew Tate, spreading their views of the world. So it's not. I think we would be very foolish to rely on the younger generation just automatically picking up these issues. It's something that needs to be taught, and we all need to recognise that our background gives us bias. Everyone has bias. Certainly being conscious of that bias is really important. But what we must do is make sure that we are recognising the difference around us, and the many ways in which that difference and those different perspectives actually add to the rich tapestry of what we're doing as an industry and what we're doing as a community, so that we really benefit from that difference. So some people are, and we're really encouraged by the newer members coming in. We have some fantastic new entrants, apprentices and so on, who are joining our FIR ambassador network. They're training themselves up. Some of them are even starting to move through. We have 4 levels of our ambassador network, and you must be at one of the levels for 12 months and complete additional requirements to move up the levels. And some of them have been in it since they joined as apprentices, and they're starting to move up, which is really encouraging. But really, we all need to be aware of the issues, and it is very much, we see fairness, inclusion, respect as something that spans the whole organisation. As I said earlier, top down, bottom up, and everywhere in between.
If we take it to the extreme, you mentioned, is it Andrew Tate? I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I know of him, but I don't know too much about him. If you're being totally inclusive, is it right to assume, therefore, that you would include his views in your deliberations? Because to be totally inclusive, you have to include people with different aspects on life. Would that be reasonable or not?
No, because there is inclusion is and respect and fairness is about making sure that what you are promoting and how you're behaving is not impacting negatively on other people. And unfortunately, views of misogynistic views like those expressed of Andrew Tate and others are certainly not are not ensuring that the safety or the well-being of other people around them. So very much when we look at behaviour, and the law looks at this too, it's not, if you're looking at harassment, it's not about what you thought of as a harasser, it's about the impact that your behaviour has on the person who feels harassed. And very much as a topic, we need to be looking at what is the impact that our behaviour can have on the people around us, and how do we minimise and remove any negative impacts that we have on people around us. look, we don't get it right all the time. Absolutely. I certainly make mistakes, and everyone I know who works in this field does as well. But a lot of it is about owning those mistakes, recognizing, stepping up and saying, I'm sorry, I really didn't anticipate that was going to come that way. But thank you very much for raising it. It's certainly something I've learned from. I won't do in future. So a lot of it is about having that safety within your culture, in your business, for people to actually raise issues and address them and move on. Sometimes it's as simple as if someone mispronounces a name and they're corrected, and yet the next time around they keep doing the same thing. That's not a very respectful way to behave. So, all of these types of things.
I'm interested as to what inclusion really means. That's all. I'm getting my head around it as an old guy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, look, it's very much making sure that you are, I guess, making everyone feel like they are a valued member in your community. So if that's in the workplace, it's about making sure people feel they're a part of that.
But not if they have a view, and I'm taking Andrew Tate as an extreme because I don't know much about him, but I've heard about him. But you wouldn't include him. That's what I'm hearing.
So everyone's entitled to their belief and their view, but when that belief or view get negatively impacts on others, that's where that behavioural management needs to step in. So we're not saying with the Fairness, Inclusion, Respect program that we're going to be able to get everyone in the construction sector thinking the same way that we do, or necessarily having the same beliefs. This is not about you believing the same thing necessarily, but we do hope that people can connect to being respected and being treated fairly in their workplace and in their environment is something that everyone wants. So it's about making sure that doesn't impact negatively on others.
I'm playing devil's advocate to a degree, just to tease out some questions that I know people might have. Well, I think we've got one more question for you, Catherine.
Sure.
Yes. If we could do one thing today to achieve a quick win, what would you recommend? There we go. That's a good one, isn't it?
One thing today. So if you're a business that hasn't touched on this before, hasn't really thought about it, I would say your first step is go and do the FIR growth assessment, because that will open your eyes to the areas of your business where you might be in touch with some of these issues, and others where you might be sort of a bit blindsided. And from there, hopefully that will stem a desire to do more and to improve on those areas. The great thing about the growth assessment is you'll get a tailored learning plan depending on your answers to that. So it will actually spit out a 10-point action plan depending on the answers to that, and completing that is entirely anonymous to your business, and you can go back and re-complete it as many times as you want. There's no cost involved, again, with any of these items in the program. So one thing today I would be go and do the FIR growth assessment. Even if you're a business who are a little bit along your journey, the same thing applies. As an individual, I would say, there's not a quick win here, but I would say educating yourself is really important, and just being aware of where these sorts of behaviours and impact on others actually really, really happens. Opening your eyes to what's happening in your business and just where things could be happening better, and jumping on a learning pathway as a first step would be my suggestion.
Okay, Catherine, I don't think there's any more questions. Abraham, is there? No, I think this slide probably is my introduction to asking for feedback. So first of all, Catherine, thank you so much for giving of your valuable time to join us for the last 60 minutes. This will appear on the website, and we do get often as many or more people, join in after the event. So we will publicize this around the membership. So thank you for your time, and thank you most of all for your knowledge. It's much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So the next one, we're actually putting an extra one in. We normally do them monthly, but we're putting an extra one in next week, a week today, using whole life carbon assessments to change mindsets. It's another area, you touched on it, Catherine, sustainability. it's another really important area that we're dealing with at the moment around the whole life carbon assessment sort of agenda. I was up at COP26 a couple of well, nearly 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, and certainly the two big issues for the construction sector, one was embodied carbon, and then the other one was whole life and retrofit and so on. So this is a really important issue that we're going to be discussing next week. So please do join us. I won't be with you next week. Howard Betts is going to be your chair because I'm going to be in Gran Canaria. So you'll have to forgive me for not joining you, but please do join us next Friday. And could you put the survey back, please, Abraham, just so we can have a look at. So just before you leave us, if you could just go on to that slido.com again, hashtag LM120523, and just fill out the feedback survey if you would. It's very helpful for us in planning future webinars, and I'm sure Catherine would like to see the results as well. For now, it's exactly 1 o'clock. It's the top of the tide. I'm appearing in Anything Goes this week, so you'll have to forgive me. Time to wish you all a very good afternoon and a splendid weekend. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.